I'm kind of racing here. So 7th principle, how much fat did these people eat? Well, it varied. Some of the African diets were fairly low in fat, 30% of calories. We saw the Eskimo diet was 80% of calories as fat. And my experience is that most people in the Western world do better on a higher fat diet, anywhere from 50 to 70% of calories. But one thing that is consistent across all these diets is only 4% of calories come from polyunsaturated fatty acids. So I just have to give you a tiny little chemistry lesson about fats. Okay, so we have 3 main types of fats. We have saturated fats, which are mostly in animal fats, but also coconut oil. These tend to be solid at room temperature. Monounsaturated oils are liquid at room temperature, but solid in the refrigerator. And then the polyunsaturated oils are liquid, even in the refrigerator. This is what these molecules look like. Saturated fat is a straight molecule. They pack together easily, and this is why they are solid at room temperature. The monounsaturates have a little kink in them. Everywhere you have one of these double bonds, they're missing 2 hydrogens, and you have a little bend in the molecule. So the monounsaturates are going to be liquid at room temperature. The polyunsaturates are real kinky, okay? And we have 2 types, the omega-6, which has 2 little bends, and the omega-3, which has 3 little bends in it. The key point here is that saturated and monounsaturated are safe. They don't break down. You can store them for a long time. They don't oxidize. They don't create free radicals. The polyunsaturates are not safe. They do break down. They do get oxidized. They create free radicals. They break down into smaller components called aldehydes. The most familiar aldehyde is formaldehyde, right? Formaldehyde. And the undertakers are saying that they don't need as much formaldehyde anymore because the bodies are also already partially pickled, okay? That's because of the polyunsaturated oils. They're breaking down into these aldehydes. And the processing of these oils requires heat, high heat, 4 times. So, once you apply heat to these fragile oils, it's even quicker. And then they they deodorize them, they put a little yellow color in them. What starts out as a black, smelly gunk ends up in the bottle looking fresh. And then they tell you to cook with these things, and you get even more oxidation. So I think of these fat molecules as kind of like having knives sticking out. Okay? And here's a very good example of what they do. So on the right, that's what arteries look like in people who are getting a lot of polyunsaturates. Whereas if you eat saturated fat, you're going to have nice, clear, smooth arteries. Exactly the opposite of what they're telling you. Many problems associated with the consumption of polyunsaturated oils. This is all in the scientific literature. Increased cancer, number 1, more cancer. Heart disease. They age you. They cause wrinkles. They disrupt the immune system. They cause liver damage. They are particularly disruptive to the reproductive organs of the lungs, the 2 sites of the most cancer in the Western world. Smoking can cause cancer, but not anything like the polyunsaturated oils. A lot of people stop smoking, they're still getting lung cancer. Okay. And in children, they impair growth and depress learning ability. Of course, we're told that we shouldn't be eating saturated fat. It's accused of everything that's happening today. None of this is true. It's just absolutely not true. Saturated fats, again, this is all from the scientific literature, are very important for healthy bones. They actually support heart function. They protect the liver. Your lungs cannot function without saturated fat. I wonder how many lung doctors know this. Anyone having lung problems needs to eat more saturated fat. Asthma, studies have shown that there's less asthma in children who get whole milk, for example. It's all out there in the literature. Saturated fats support the immune system. They work synergistically with the essential fatty acids, and they support the body's detoxification. This was from Europe, 2005, I think. The top is the countries with the lowest saturated fat consumption. You can see various rates of heart disease. On the bottom, the countries with the highest saturated fat consumption, they have the lowest rates of heart disease. So at the bottom there you have France. It's the French paradox, right? Then you have Switzerland, Netherlands, Iceland, Belgium, Finland, Austria. All these paradoxes, all these countries where a lot of saturated fat and they have low levels of heart disease. You know, if a theory has so many paradoxes, there's something wrong with the theory. The theory is wrong, okay? So in primitive diets, you had about 4% of calories as these polyunsaturates. They were in the food. We need a small amount of these. They're called essential fatty acids. We can't make them. We need them. But they're in the food. They're protected when they're in the food. The modern diet is 20% or more of calories as polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are in the vegetable oils, the industrial seed oils. And not only is it way too much, way more than we need, but they're rancid and oxidized. So we don't have to worry about supplementing with these things. We get them from the foods that we eat. The other thing they do with these oils is they hydrogenate them to make them hard, like for margarine and shortening. Now, I will say there's a lot less of this today than there was in the past, thanks mainly to the work of my co-author, Mary Enig. But let's just quickly go through how they make trans fats, partially hydrogenated fats. So they start with the cheapest oils. They're extracted with high temperature and pressure. Then they use hexane, which is gasoline, to remove the final oils from the seeds. The oils are already rancid. They're steam cleaned. That removes all the vitamins and antioxidants, but the pesticides and solvents are still there. Then they're mixed with finely grated nickel powder, and they're put in a room as big as this barn with, can you imagine, filled with vegetable oil and powdered nickel, and then the hydrogen at high temperature is bubbled through. And what goes into that reactor is this liquid. What comes out is a semi-solid that looks like gray cottage cheese, and it stinks to high heaven. Then they steam clean it to remove the odor. They use emulsifiers to get the lumps out, and then they remove the gray color by bleaching. So at that point, you have what's called pure vegetable shortening. That's Crisco, okay? Which we were all told to use because lard was bad for us, because lard had cholesterol in it, or saturated fat. So that's Crisco. That's what they use for French fries in the fast food places and so forth. To make margarine, they add artificial flavors, synthetic vitamins. They are not allowed to add an artificial color. They have to add a natural color to margarine. Now, isn't that comforting? Then it's packaged in blocks and tubs and promoted as a health food. And because this stuff is so cheap to make, they've had billions of dollars to advertise it, to influence the medical profession, and to get people to eat this garbage. And so what happens is you create trans fats. You move one of the hydrogens over to the other side. That straightens out the molecule so it behaves chemically like a saturated fat, but biochemically it doesn't work. And with the liquid oils, you get uncontrolled reactions, chemical reactions. With the trans fats, you get inhibited chemical reactions. The enzymes don't work, receptors don't work, hormone production doesn't work. Just kind of stops things. So just as a summary, liquid polyunsaturated oils cause uncontrolled reactions in the body. The partially hydrogenated oils inhibited reactions in the body. So the result is biochemical chaos. The number one thing you can do to improve your diet is to get rid of these industrial seed oils and use animal fats instead. And many, many diseases caused by these trans fats. Cancer, degeneration of the joints and tendons is why so many people need hip replacements today. Skin problems, they lower testosterone, they lower sperm count, and they're very bad for growing babies. Finally, the government came out and said that trans fats are bad. We're going to get rid of them in the food supply, which they've mostly done. But what they did was they used this whole business of trans fats to blast the saturated fats. So they came out and said, trans fats are bad. Gosh, they're just as bad as saturated fats. See? But the thing is, the saturated fats have the opposite reactions, opposite effects compared to the trans fats. They're good. For example, saturated fats help the insulin receptors on our cells, but they inhibit, the trans fats inhibit insulin receptors. Saturated fats enhance the immune system. Trans fats depress the immune system. So just remember our rule. The government says saturated fats are bad, right? What does that mean? That they're good. So a few interesting studies. We give low-fat milk to our children in schools, and that's supposed to keep them from getting fat. But we have 2 studies showing that children on low-fat diets or skim milk diets had greater weight gain, and they ended up eating more sugar. Women drinking low-fat milk had fertility problems. When they put them on full-fat milk, they were able to get pregnant. And then the guy running the study said, well, it was very embarrassing to the powers that be, this study. They said, well, once you get pregnant, you can go back to drinking skim milk again. Don't you think that the foods you need to get pregnant are the foods you need to grow a healthy baby? But my favorite study of all the literature is this one from Sweden. Women using cheese and full-fat dairy had lower weight gain as they grew older. It didn't say no weight gain, lower weight gain, okay? It is normal and healthy, natural, desirable for women to gain weight when they go through menopause. That weight, that extra fat is not bad for you. It actually takes over from the ovaries and produces estrogen and also stem cells. And if you are 50 years old and you can still wear your prom dress, you're too thin, okay? You're supposed to gain about 2 dress sizes when you come to menopause. That's healthy, that's normal, that's natural. You don't want to gain any more, of course. And that's why you do the full fat. It's my favorite study. Anyway, the big campaign against trans fats, and they compared them to the saturated fats. It's kind of disgusting. And this is from the World Heart Federation. They're comparing butter to razor blades. I was asked to give a talk at the Chatham House in London, which is kind of this think tank thing. And there was a guy there from the World Heart Federation, and I gave my talk about how we need to eat butter and have plenty of salt in our diet. I thought he was going to have a heart attack right there. And here, comparing saturated fat to a mousetrap. Yeah. I mean, this is relentless propaganda against natural foods. What we see in the supermarkets today is the healthy spreads, right? Because they can make these without trans fats, but they are full of bad oils anyway, and plus a lot of fillers and emulsifiers and so forth. So most people don't eat margarine anymore. They eat the healthy spreads. So these are the bad fats, the margarines and spreads, the salad dressings, the oils, the cooking oils, and all the things made with them, the artificial whipped cream, mayonnaise and Crisco and that kind of. This is what you want to get out of your diet. And they're in all the foods, you know, processed foods, they're in the snack foods, and they're in the fast food. French fries used to be made in tallow, which is very healthy, but now they're made with vegetable oils. So they're cancer sticks. and the salad dressing. The first thing you can do is make your own salad dressing. These are such garbage. Read the label.